I'm about to send the link.
All right.
All right, all right, all right.
Yep. Are you making a Facebook post?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Let me send it.
Let's see, there we go.
All right. Drewby Drew. Are you ready?
Jimmy Jam, I'm ready.
I don't know if we have anybody joined in just yet, but we can go ahead and start doing our usual intro, which is Drew, what have you been watching?
Jim, I've been watching nothing but James Bond.
Oh, that's right.
But I did actually watch Steel Magnolia, or is it
nice.
Steel Magnolias? Sorry. I thought it was really good. I didn't really know what to expect from it, but my girlfriend is a big fan of the movie, and she really wanted to watch it, and I was like, sure, why not? And it was really enjoyable. I feel like we don't get too often films that focus on like middle-aged women, and like all of these characters were just like super fun to watch. Just their chemistry on screen, the actresses like gave great performances. And I also was not expecting it to be as emotional as it was, because it's more of a comedy, and it's like really heartfelt, and I don't know, a little bit more lighthearted for the most part, but kind of pulls on your heartstrings more than I was expecting. So it was a fun little movie.
Nice. Yeah, I've not seen that one, but I've heard it's good. So I should probably get around to watching it. So outside of that, a lot of Bond.
A whole lot of Bond. I still need I started what is it? A View to Kill. So I still need to finish that. So probably after we're done streaming, I'll get on that. But yeah, the last one I watched was Octo P Word. So what a film there. You know, it's a movie.
Yeah. Semi spoilers, I guess, for whenever we do our recap for whatever Bond episode we'll be doing when we have to recap those ones. Because I have a feeling we're not going to be, of the Roger Moore ones, I have a feeling it's not going to be Octo P Word that we're going to be discussing on the podcast.
Maybe it is.
Gosh, I hope not. It's like my thought. I'll just give my thoughts on that one. It left such a small impression on me. Like, we were kind of like, I tend to think, hey, you need to, you know, when you're watching a movie, you watch a movie, your phone's up and stuff. But on some of these bad Bond movies, it's just way more fun to have my phone out and to say, hey, this silly thing just happened. Did you see that? Blah, blah, blah. And so I had it like, it was fun because I guess I should say, you and I were watching it at the same time. And so if something funny happened, we'd be able to message and be like, oh my gosh. And I think that ended up being more entertaining than the movie itself. And it's a shame because That, and I like A View to a Kill a little bit more than that one, but even like, but that one also isn't very good to me. So it's a shame to me that having really enjoyed more as much as I had, it's disappointing that I did not like his last couple. So
Yeah, and I'd say especially after The Spy Who Loved Me, and then also Moonraker being surprisingly like
it's
really
fun.
awesome. You know, yeah, I feel like it's pretty tragic that Roger Moore went out on such a weak note.
Yeah.
Because he does have some really solid Bond films, I think.
Hmm.
Definitely underrated. So
Yeah. Uh, I for me, for what I've watched lately, I'm kind of the same. It's just nonstop Bond, but I'm I took a quick pit stop for Christmas Keepsake. Uh, it is not good. It's like one of those Hallmark-ish movies. This one was like, it's shot like it's a Folgers commercial. It's the chemistry between the dad and the daughter is just not there. Like, it's the most kind of like, hey, oh, and like this movie's claim to like, hey, this is what makes us different, is they are Australian. They moved to America from Australia. Um, and so, but they'll stand around each other and be like, hey, what if we did this thing for Christmas? And then it's like this pause, and she's like, yeah, Dad, I think that would be good. It's like, this,
seems like a
what?
pretty accurate representation of Australian people.
Yeah, probably. Hey, Andrew Clark has joined us in the comments.
Yes.
Hello.
And he
Happy to
says
have you.
Muppet supremacy. Agreed.
I'm behind on the chat. I don't see that, but that makes me happy. Um, so because of that, because basically all we've watched is Bond plus this one movie. I guess we don't have a lot of a lot of fodder, if you will, to discuss before getting into our movie. So let's just dive into a movie that I love so much. Muppet Christmas Carol, or The Muppet Christmas Carol. Drew, what is your history with this? And has your relationship slash thoughts on it changed over time?
Yeah, so I grew up watching the Muppets, not like the Muppets show, but like I'd seen a decent amount of like the Muppet movies. Um, you know, I feel like the Muppets was just like a really big thing when I was growing up, and then like other like media related to the Muppets. So like like stuff like Sesame Street, any kind of like stuff with puppets. That was just like my thing for a long time when I was a kid.
Did you ever watch
Um,
Dark Crystal?
no, I actually
Oh,
haven't. That's one that's a blind spot for me.
you gotta watch it.
Yeah, it's one that's like been on my watch list. So I just never got around to it. But yeah, I love, like, there's so many Muppet characters that I love. They're super iconic. Um, and so I watched I watched this for the first time 2 years ago, actually. Um, and I watched it while I was suffering from COVID.
Mm.
So wasn't fun, but I really liked it, like, a lot. I gave it 4 stars. I mean, I honestly loved it. I gave it 4 stars on my first watch. Um, I think that I wasn't as high on it in terms of my rating when I first watched it, just because I was like super sick. So I just think I wasn't like fully like paying attention to everything. Um, but I watched it again last year, and it was like something just unlocked in my brain, and I was like, all right, this isn't just, this exceeds being good. And now I'd honestly say, because I watched it twice last year, I think I can honestly say, like, I think it's one of my favorite Christmas films now. um I a Christmas Carol, or like the Christmas Carol is like a story that I was already familiar with. So I think this is just a really fun adaptation, with some really killer performances, and it also has the Muppets. So
Yeah. This was kind of like a staple of my childhood. It was this. So the earliest on, it was back and forth between this and Muppet Treasure Island. Those were the two ones that I watched all the time. And then when Muppets from Space came out, I watched a lot of that one. I actually never watched like the old Jim Henson directed ones. It was always Brian Henson and on. So like Treasure Island and Christmas Carol and afterwards. And what's funny is like Muppet Christmas Carol was one where I'm like, as an adult, like, am I gonna continue to like this as much as I did as a kid, or is this gonna be one of the ones where I'm like, I still like it because I liked it as a kid, and it's still good, but like there's kind of a nostalgia tax that you got to factor in. What I found is I love this movie more as an adult than I did as a kid, because like as a kid, Muppet Treasure Island was always my favorite. I thought it was funnier. You had the adventure, all of that stuff, and I liked Muppet Christmas Carol. But I always preferred Treasure Island to it. And then watching it as an adult, I'm like, Treasure Island's still great, but this one is awesome. Like this is it, without irony, like it became my favorite Christmas movie. So one of the first things that I wanted to talk about with this is just your thoughts on this kind of an adaptation. Like for me, typically, if there's a story and then somebody's gonna like, hey, we're gonna tell the blah 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 story, or we're adapting this, and it's like, but we're putting this spin on it, or we're doing this to it. I typically am just like, just do the thing in its original like format. Like there's a new movie coming out that's like adapting the Odyssey, but it's like, but we're adapting it with this twist. And I'm like, I would just rather see you adapt the Odyssey. I just do that without the twist. So, and this is I love the Christmas Carol book, and I'm like, this is a great story. On paper, I should be like, no, we don't need the Christmas Carol, but with the Muppet twist, because that's just gonna make it stupid, and like irreverent and like less serious and blah blah blah. But for some reason, I think that this adaptation, like the way they're worked into it, is super seamless and also really like respectful. It's not like, haha, isn't it hilarious that the Muppets are doing this? What a silly dumb thing. It's like there's like still a deep reverence for the source material in the like the original Muppet dialogue and stuff. And I think that's one thing that really helps it work for me. So what are your thoughts on this, like as an adaptation?
Yeah. No, I think it works excellently. Because I'm also with you. I like, usually if something's gonna be an adaptation, I don't want it to be like, it doesn't necessarily need to be 1-to-1 to the original,
Right.
but like I think it needs to respect enough of the original to like really pull me in. And I somehow they're able to pull it off in this, which is wild, because like, yeah, there's plenty of like Muppets comedy in here, but they never pull away from, or never stray away from like what makes the Christmas Carol a Christmas Carol. The core story is still there. You're still getting all the same themes, and they really lean into the emotion of the story, or the emotional impact of the, which like is kind of unexpected, because when you think of the Muppets, it's just like, oh, you've got fun movies like the Muppets, Treasure Island, and stuff like that. But they don't hold back with this. And I've like, a large part of it is because Michael Caine delivers a killer
Yeah.
performance, which is insane because it's like, this is just the Muppets, bro. But he was like, you know
Didn't have to
what?
go that hard.
I'm gonna drop an Oscar-worthy performance in a Muppets movie. But yeah, and also I think like, because you've got, these iconic characters and you these really cute like Muppet characters, it kind of, I feel like it kind of adds a little bit of an extra punch with like seeing the Tiny Tim stuff like
Yeah.
near the end of the film. It's like, no, this should not be happening to him. So I don't know. It somehow, like, it on paper it shouldn't work, but they somehow pulled it off.
Yeah, fully agree. I like that image whenever, Scrooge is saying, will the boy live? And he's like, I cannot say, but I see an empty stool next to the fire and a crutch without an owner or something. And it zooms in on this. I'm like, oh my gosh, don't do that to me. That part gets me every single time. Um, and so oh, my brother has joined us in the comments. Joseph joined and said using Muppets allowed us to see the real humanity in Dickens' tale. And I think that's a good thought of like, if you can do like, here's a puppet frog and a puppet pig, they're in a relationship. If that's like the premise and like the emotion still comes through, it's because you've told it so well that like that it works. And so, and I also think like with that idea of this being an adaptation that's not like poking fun at the source material or being like, isn't it so dumb and funny that frogs are saying these lines? It really is very reverential for the source material. Like at the very beginning, whenever he's like, I'm Charles Dickens, and he's like, you are not Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was a genius. I was like, oh, thanks. And whenever, he begins, he's like, the Marleys were dead to begin with. And he's like, ooh, that's a good opening. Like, that's nice and spooky. And it has one of my favorite lines ever where he's like, is this a little bit too much? Like, should we be thinking about the kids in the audience? And Gonzo is like, nah, this is culture. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
And so it feels like it's any time that they're ever directly talking about the source material, like in the kind of fourth wall breaking, it's always in like, oh, by the way, like what we're adapting is awesome. And like, we're proud to actually be adapting it. And I just think that goes so far in making the whole thing work. Because again, I just think if the whole thing was kind of if it was a Muppet parody of it, that would be annoying. But I think because it steers clear of ever being a parody and is just fully an adaptation, I think that's part of why it works so much.
Yeah. It did what the VeggieTales parodies can never do.
Hey, some of those are funny though.
Yeah, they are. Lord of the Bean, dude.
Great. But none of those are as good as this. No. And you already brought up, I think, what is probably like maybe the main draw or highlight of it, which is Michael Caine. So what are some Michael Caine thoughts on this movie? Because I don't think that our thoughts on this are I think they're pretty shared. I've really enjoyed it. It seems like every year everybody is sharing memes about like what Michael Caine did in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, I already alluded to it. I think that his performance is phenomenal in this. And like, I'd go as far to say, like, which this is saying a lot because he's had a lot of great performances. I think this is one of his best performances.
I do too.
Which is just, again, so wild to say. But like, genuinely, like, I love the way that he portrays Scrooge, and just seeing his character evolve throughout the film, seeing him become more vulnerable and like opening up emotionally, like towards the end of the film. just his progression as a character, I think, is fantastic in this. Not just because he's got, you know, the writing of A Christmas Carol to work with, but like I think I honestly, like, I can't picture anybody else in this role in this film.
Yeah.
Like he just like nails everything that I'd want from like a live action Scrooge, you know. And I'm saying live action because, you know, we the last time I can think A Christmas Carol is Robert Zemeckis
Oh.
goated goated animated film.
Yeah, man, this real competition with this one for best adaptation, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean this performance to me, like I'm with you. He's one of the, like the great British actors, and it's insane, but just true that one of his best performances is in a Muppet movie. And it makes sense though, because I remember there's a quote from an interview a while back where he had said, I think it was in an interview with The Guardian, where uh, I can't remember if the director had said this or if Michael Caine himself said this, but basically one of the two had said that Michael Caine only accepted the role on one condition. And he said, I'm going to play this movie like I'm working with the Royal Shakespeare Company. He said, I will never wink. I will never do anything Muppety. I'm going to play Scrooge as if it is an utterly dramatic role.
Nice.
It's like, that's why this movie is so awesome, is because he treats the Muppets like they're actors. Like he talks to Bob like he's a dude in the room with him. There's no, like he said, there's no winking, there's no like playing it up. He doesn't like, he in his physical presence, he's not like, you know, being crazy. Somebody pointed out in a meme, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so true, is that this movie and Treasure Island work so well because in this one, Michael Caine performed as if all of the Muppets were human. And Tim Curry works in Muppet Treasure Island so well because he performed as if he were a Muppet, along with all the other, like, it's, their performances are so dialed into their particular movies. But yeah, he plays this role with such like conviction. And like you said, the journey he goes on from start to finish, every moment, every ghost, every lesson, like all of the different emotions that's required of him. And there's a lot of subtlety to his performance as well. Like whenever the Ghost of Christmas Present is showing him the game that his nephew is playing with his friends and everything, and Scrooge starts like guessing along. He's like, "Oh, I said that one first." You know, he's like he's there and he's having fun. And then whenever like the joke is made that like the thing that they were guessing was him, just the look on his face when he realizes that after having like just being like enjoying being present in that. I'm like, this is, I get really sad seeing him react to that because I'm like, oh, he was starting to enjoy it, but like, I don't know. He's never too broad with his emotion. He allows for like some real emotional subtlety in the performance. And then especially with that scene of where he's there with the tombs, like just like weeping and bargaining, and just like that scene is to me one of like the greatest scenes ever. It's so good, like him constantly looking back, he pointing at different tombstones, you know, trying not to get there. It's just, it's so freaking good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I really like the way that you put it, that he treats the Muppets as if they were humans, and that's absolutely why it works so well. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on musicals in general?
I wouldn't say necessarily that I'm a musical fan, just because I haven't watched nearly as many as I'd like to. But most of the musicals that I've seen, I love. Like this one, La La Land, White Christmas. Gosh, I'm blanking. Oh, West Side Story, Steven Spielberg's. I haven't seen the original of that. I'd like to. But Spielberg's is phenomenal. Um, there's a couple other that I'm missing, but I really enjoy musicals. The Wizard of Oz isn't technically a musical, but I really love the music in it. So
Wait, is that not a? That's a musical,
is
right?
it?
Yeah, I think everybody gets their like song introduction and stuff.
True,
You
true.
got your Somewhere Over the Rainbow, If I Only Had a Brain, all that kind of.
That's true. Well, then throw that on the list. So
There you go.
yeah, I mean, like I've seen some of the classics. I've seen some of the more recent ones. But yeah, I really enjoy musicals. Um, but I will say that like I feel like the musical genre is a lot harder to work with. Because you know if the music doesn't work for you, then it it's kind of pointless. And then if the choreography and the filmmaking don't match up to the music, it also kind of feels a bit redundant. So I feel like it's a much like tougher space to work in for genre.
But I'm glad that you like the genre itself, because I know like the genre tends to be. I think there are probably more people who are like a musical is a barrier to entry for me more than maybe any other genre except for horror. You know, there
Yeah.
are so many people who are like, I won't watch that because it is a musical, which means it kind of keeps people from the best adaptation of this story.
Yeah.
But so, what are your thoughts on this as a musical?
Um Again, shouldn't work, but I think it does. The music in this goes hard. And like, yeah, you've got freaking Kermit the Frog singing music or singing songs. And I mean, it's silly in the way that, like, you know, he sounds like Kermit the Frog, but I think that the music works really well here. It's super catchy. Um, and it fits the vibes of the film. Um, and I love like all the musical numbers. I love the way that they're shot and the choreography and everything. So it really works for me. Even though it probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I think like honestly, a lot of my favorite like Christmas songs or even musical numbers come from this. Like, I love the opening song, the song about Scrooge. You know, just as he's
Yeah,
walking through the streets. Um, that song is awesome, and it's got great like it's just shot super well in that it does. It's so convincing in selling like that this is an old, an old Dickensian, London. Like he's walking through the streets, and you've got all of like the Muppets integrated into the surrounding. Like it's weird. You'd feel like the worry would be that it would feel too much like a stage, and you just kind of get them walking back and forth here. But
yeah,
like it actually sells itself as like a city, and the
it
integration of
does.
just people and Muppets like walking through the streets and buying stuff at the market and like looking at the windows and stuff. It weirdly feels like an actual city that's just inhabited by people and Muppets.
Dude,
And I
it's a
think it's
real
shot
city in
really
real
well.
life, actually.
That's
There's
actually
actual
true.
Muppets.
That's true. Which is why this works so well. But yeah, like uh I love that song. I love One More Sleep Till Christmas. I gotta
Yes.
sing it every Christmas Eve. You gotta be either singing or listening to only
Yeah.
One More Sleep Till Christmas.
It goes so hard.
Um, it's so good. And that another like you brought up the fact that like, with a musical, it's not just about songs, but it's about filmmaking and it's about choreography and all that stuff. I love that sequence of like the rats getting ready to close down for business, and like they're launching themselves up to pull down the blinds, and they're carrying
Yeah.
all the books, and like that sequence is so good and so funny. And then probably like what is my favorite Christmas song is the one that the Ghost of Christmas Present sings "It Feels Like Christmas," the one where it's like wherever you find love, it feels like Christmas. Like that one when he's just out in the courtyard, I'm like, this is probably the jolliest Christmas vibe in the entire world. Like just being out and about singing this with this guy, and this is the jolliest guy in the entire world. Like everything I love about Christmas is packed into this song and this whole sequence. And I'm curious, were you able to watch the version that had the breakup song?
So I think the first time I watched it, it didn't have it, and then when I rewatched it last year, I did see that version.
Okay.
Yeah.
I forget who was in charge of Disney at the time, but they really like messed things up because they were like, this song is too depressing for a kids movie. Pull it out. And what's so stupid is like that scene is why Scrooge is the way he is, you know,
Yeah.
like, and but beyond that, because you can be like, oh well, whatever, you know, all we have to know in that scene is that they broke up and we're good. But I mean, one, she expresses all the reasons in the song, so it's like you cut the scene in half, you cut her character in half because she expresses all the reasons why she has to like call it off with him in the song itself. So now that's half a scene. But what's also huge is that that song is called When Love Is Gone, and it's got its own melody at the very end of the movie when Scrooge has gone through his arc and he's at the table with the food and everybody's there. He sings The Love We Found to the exact same tune as she sang When Love Is Gone. So it's this beautiful redemptive moment where he takes the tune of this moment that turned him into this hard-hearted person he was, and now all of a sudden it's this beautiful melody like being sung not by one voice but by all of the voices around this table. And it's like, how do you cut that like that? I mean, it's still a great scene hearing him sing that, but not knowing that that's reprising a previous tune sung about losing love, and now we're taking that tune and we're making it joyful and we're singing about finding love. Like, it's a two-part thing. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I really, whenever people say they're gonna watch that, I'm like, please make sure you're watching the one that has that song, because removing it is a tragedy.
Yeah. Brandon Barnes said, yes, the love found, where did it come from if the song is cut? Oh, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, I said reprise is fulfilling the arc. Like you're saying, no better argument could be made for keeping it in that, or keeping it in than that. Yeah, like it feels like it's a redemptive moment, and that comes through without the song only, in that, you know, he's gone through this redemptive arc. But I love that it's actually redeeming that moment by allowing the same tune to be in both scenes, and say like, this song, this melody, the sound that was once associated with a closed heart and a lost love, instead of like, we're taking that moment and we're turning it into something beautiful. And so it really bothers me that the reasoning was like, it's too sad for kids, cut it.
Yeah, and like that's, you shouldn't even have to say to people, make sure you watch the right version. Like, it's something that's like really bothered me with Disney Plus, is like removing things from old films. Like, obviously, like if you want to have like a trigger warning or something like that, some sort of warning at the beginning of the film, that's one thing, like that's fine. But like literally removing stuff that like was pre-existing to the film, and in this case where it's like not even like anything that's like, you know, like, I don't know, like racist or you know,
Well,
something like that they've like removed in like previous films, when you're like removing a scene because it's like, oh well, it's too sad, like that just doesn't make any sense. Like it's
the
oh
thing
god.
is, this wasn't, I was just gonna say, this wasn't removed for Disney Plus. This was like in the 90s when it came
Oh
out. This was
really?
this was one of those
Okay.
instances of the studio or what we would call like put under the category of studio interference or whatever. Like this was shot, and then whenever this movie came out, like during post
Gotcha.
editing, whoever was the head of Disney at the time was like, this is too sad, take it out of the film. And so it
Interesting.
wasn't until like later releases that you got the option to watch it with it. And so I wish that on Disney Plus, I think you scroll over to extras and it's there. That's where it is as an option. But the thing is, unless you know that they have it, you wouldn't know that, like, oh, the extended cut is under the extras tab
Yeah.
here. And so I kind of wish that when you clicked on it, they were just super upfront and be like, hey, there's two versions of this movie.
Yeah.
Because without knowing that going into it, if you're just scrolling through and you're trying to find something to watch and put on for your kids or whatever, there is absolutely nothing that's going to let you know that, hey, this is the extended cut or whatever you want to call the version with the song is actually buried under the options. But it's at least there. So that's why I made the post on the group. I'm like, hey guys, if you're watching it
Yeah.
today, this breaks it down for how to find it. Please watch that version. But yeah, all that to say, I think the music throughout, whether it's the fun, super Christmassy, cheerful songs, or that song, or the ending song. I was having a conversation with somebody maybe a couple of weeks ago as we were like getting ready to like watch Christmas movies and stuff. I was like, if there's any scene to me that just makes me feel like legitimate joy, like not just like, oh, this is fun, I'm happy, blah blah blah, but I'm just like, my gosh, this is like reaching into my soul and making me happy on like a deeper level. It is after, like, when Scrooge wakes up and he's a changed person, and he's going, like, he's like, buy the turkey, buy, like, and he makes a huge donation, and Beaker gives him his scarf, and he's like so moved by that simple act of kindness, like being given that scarf, just like it looks like it rocks his world in like the most positive way. And like that
Yeah.
whole sequence of him going out and making the donation and buying the turkey and inviting everybody over and singing in a thankful heart through the streets. I'm like, this brings me like true joy. Like I love every bit of this, and it makes me feel so happy. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think as a musical, this movie kills it.
For sure. And like not speaking from a musical level, but like I think just in terms of like being a Christmas movie, that's something that I really really like about this film is like, I think like a lot of my favorite Christmas films are the ones where it puts you through like this kind of emotional roller coaster, but by the end, like you're just filled with so much joy. The other film that comes to mind is It's a Wonderful Life. You go through this emotional roller coaster, but by the end, the family's together. Like everyone's happy. Christmas is here. Like I think that you know Christmas movies don't have to just be fun and funny and joyful like 24/7. I think there's like enough space for like the great Christmas films to actually be able to like really, play with sadness, like it can get a little depressing at times, but when you bring it back to the joy of Christmas, I think like that's really what makes a great Christmas film for me. And this one does it for me 100%.
I think the most fulfilling joy is the kind of joy that can live through something really dark, you know? Like a person who can go through something super dark and still be able to like find and feel and express joy after that is just going to be way more profound than
Yeah.
like the really joyful ending at the end of a movie that was always pretty happy.
Yeah.
I'm like, my two favorite Christmas. You've already brought up the other one. It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, so in this movie, in the Muppet Christmas Carol, the scene before this most joyful scene is the Ghost of Christmas Future. It's whenever he's being pointed, his tombstone is being pointed out to him, saying, "You're going to die, and people will either not care or laugh. You will, like, all of your clothing will be stolen and pawned off, and this, like, the seedy parts of the city. Like, this is your legacy, is
Yeah.
people like auctioning off in seedy places your curtains. Like, that is what you will be." Um, and it's after that scene, after he's on his knees sobbing, then we get this scene, and it's way more powerful for it, which, you know, it's a testament to Christmas Carol, which everybody should read because it's amazing, and also to this movie for, like what you said, following the beats of the story and not sugarcoating any of it. And it's like, this is what happened in the story, and so we're going to commit to this. The film is going to commit to it. Kane is going to commit to it. And then with, It's a Wonderful Life, I mean, that movie, like, basically begins with an attempted suicide. Like,
Yeah.
it's a dark movie. There's scenes whenever he's lashing out at his family that I'm like, I forgot how hard this was to watch. I love George Bailey. Seeing him, like, yell at everybody, like, this breaks my heart. But it's because we have to live through that the ending of that film, like, brings me to tears. So yeah, I think the sincere joy is made all the better because of the legitimate, like, darkness that these kinds of movies explore.
Yeah. It feels a lot more earned when you have
Yeah.
like roadblocks in the way to keep you from getting there. Which just makes it like 10 times more impactful.
Yeah. But like, as serious. Oh, and speaking of that scene that does get so dark, I love it, and this goes back to the reverential aspect of the adaptation. But Gonzo and Rizzo are like, "Hey, this is pretty freaky. We're gonna bounce." And it's almost, and then they come back at the end. They're like, "Hey, we're back. We told you we'd come back, so we do." But Gonzo and Rizzo are not there to make any commentary during the entire Ghost of Christmas Future sequence. And to me, I just take that as the movie being like, the temptation to trivialize this portion is going to be too high if we can make Rizzo joking about jelly beans. Like, it is for the best. It's in the best service of this film to completely pull them out of this part so that we can just let Scrooge have this moment. And so, yeah, man, when it goes dark, it commits to it. And like, that Black Rider design is so, it's terrified me as a kid, dude. And the effect, like the swirling effect of like going through the portals and stuff, I'm like, dang, this is a real movie. This is so cool. But on top of all of that, it is still a comedy. Does it work for you as a comedy?
Yes, absolutely. It's hilarious. Also, shout out to the Muppets inventing Riz before
Yeah.
before we did. No. But yeah, Stone yeah, I love the comedy in this. And maybe I was biased because I already loved the Muppets. So I mean, I did have that going for me, but I think the comedy is great. You already mentioned like seeing like all the rats like getting ready to leave for work, like they're super funny. Groucho and Rizzo are super funny. So you like, yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look up some quotes because I'm blanking. I had like a few specific ones, but I'm blanking off the top of my head.
There's I think the comedy. Well, to go to your point about, like, we like Muppets growing up. I feel like you've probably experienced this too. I know I have, like watching movies as a kid that you love and then watching as an adult, and like things that made me laugh as a kid don't always make me laugh now, you know.
Yeah.
Like I will watch movies I thought were hilarious as a kid and I'll watch it now and be like, gosh, dude, that was so dumb. So like I think the fact that it makes me laugh now means that I still find it funny and I'm not just laughing because I laughed as a kid. But I think the comedy that this movie goes for, it's kind of like there's like the obvious in your face kind of jokes, um, and then like there's just funny background stuff. There's a lot of really good visual comedy in this, like just
Yeah.
really funny. Like there's no lines; it's just what's happening is really funny. Um, but like one of like the background lines that just kills me is whenever the the rats are trying to get Kermit to ask for all of Christmas off, and he's like, well, you know, it's customary to, you know, about tomorrow, and he's like, fine, what time would be appropriate, or how much are you thinking about taking off? And he's like, well, the whole day, sir. And the rats are like, yeah, yeah. And then Scrooge is like, the whole day. And in the background, they're like, no, no, that was the frog's idea. But like, whatever the one in the background just says, no, that was the frog's idea. That kills me every time. And you know, like, oh, can we get extra coal? It's too cold. And he's like, extra coal. And they're like, heat wave. And they're like, it's all of that, like that cracks me up. And then it's such a dumb bit, but it kills me whenever Rizzo doesn't want to have to like climb and jump over the gate, and he finally does. And then he's like, oh wait, I forgot my jelly beans. And he just like fits himself through the bars to go back and grab the jelly beans and comes back.
Yes.
The little like, he's like, what? And then he just kisses Gonzo on the nose. Like this is peak comedy.
Yes.
So I think this movie is freaking hilarious.
Yeah, and it has like such a unique sense of humor too. Like it's very specific to the Muppets. But it works really well here. And like also I just find it like interesting how they're able to like balance the comedy so well with all of the serious stuff in the film, and with respecting like the actual story of the Christmas Carol. Because like that's another thing that they could have like really like failed with, is like not finding that right balance. But I think like you get enough of like a steady flow here where like you've got a good amount of comedy like layered throughout, and it's paced really well. It's not like overkill in one moment and then like too little in the next. It like just I feel like it's like got a really good rhythm to it.
Yeah, the comedy is, to me, pretty consistent. Like I think it's pretty consistently hilarious. I think it's the same whenever he uses Rizzo to like clean the the window, and he's just like running across it, and then he's like, yeah. Thanks for letting me be a part of this.
Yeah.
Or one of the lines that I quote more than anything is, you got Sam the Eagle, who like his general like Muppet personality is like this ultra patriotic USA kind of guy.
Yeah.
And whenever he's like, it is the American way, and Gonzo like walks into frame and whispers in his ear, and he's like, oh, it is the British way. Like it's so clever and it's so funny.
Yeah.
Like I think that's why the comedy doesn't feel insulting either or undermining, because it's like, it's also like cleverly written and intelligent comedy itself. So it's like, oh, you can pepper the comedy into this like this movie that also wants to be serious, because when you're being funny, you're also like really good at it and really clever about it.
Yeah. Brandon's shouting out a couple of good moments.
Oh yeah.
I really like one of my favorite bits of comedy is with Scrooge, actually. And he says, let us deal with the eviction notices for tomorrow. And then Cratchit says, but sir, tomorrow is Christmas. And then he says, very well, you may gift wrap though.
it's got some dark humor that's really good.
It works so well.
Yeah. So looking at the comments, within that Sam the Eagle scene, another great line that Brandon points out is, "You will love business," and he's just like, that's a constant refrain. Or refrain is like, "It is the way of business."
Yes.
And then to backtrack just a little bit away from our conversation on comedy, he asked, "Have we ever wondered why the ghosts of Christmas yet to come piles it on when Scrooge's heart was already open when he sang with the Ghost of Christmas Present and genuinely asked about Tiny Tim?" I think, to me, it would be too easy, I guess. In some ways, there are stories that I find beautiful where like a character learns a lesson, and the absolute beauty of it is that it doesn't require anything of them. That like after all the things that they've done, it's like, and they feel the weight of their guilt on themselves. They still get their arc, and they still get to like, everything's fine. And in a way, this is also that kind of story because he wakes up and he's got his whole life ahead of him. But I do feel like if it just ended at like, oh man, I get it. It could almost be not kind of a self-serving kind of arc, because he does genuinely ask about Tiny Tim. But it feels like whenever he's watching the games being played, he's enjoying the games and he's like, oh no, this is fun, I get it. And he's singing It Feels Like Christmas, and he's like, oh man, this is great, I'm loving this. But it's still very much, it's him realizing the happiness it brings out in him. And I just think there's an extra layer that we get whenever it's like, okay, great, this is awesome, but we're not quite done yet. There's more to this. And so for him to truly see, it's not just that like there's this world of joy out there that you weren't aware of, but it's like, now that you've seen the world of joy that some people have, we also need to take a look at the world that you're going to leave in your wake. Like whenever you're gone, this will be your legacy. So it's not just we're seeing what it's like you've got two different realities or two different futures, and we're seeing the great one, but he's traded that for something else. And so I think we need to see the thing he's traded, and then we need to see the thing he's traded it for, which is this, like this is the end of your lifestyle. This is the ends of your penny pinching. This is what it's all been about. And I think having to suffer through that realization, if anything, it's just going to make it stick more. Because you could imagine like somebody having that moment of ecstasy, of joy, being like, oh, this is great, I'm a changed man. But if they weren't actually put through it, a feeling like that can pass, and then the penny pinching comes back. So I think for the lesson to truly stick, he kind of has to be plunged into the depths of like the reality that he's currently heading towards. So that's kind of my take on it.
That was like a a mic drop right there, dude. This man was spitting.
But I kind of, to me, goes back to what we were saying earlier about that idea of joy. Like if you think about how flat that last song in the street would have fallen if we went from It Feels Like Christmas to In a Thankful Heart. Like if those were the two songs that went back to back, imagine how little we'd feel versus moving from the songless period with the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, and then In a Thankful Heart. Like the transition there is just so much more powerful to me than simply going from happy song to happy song.
100% agreed.
I guess so we've talked a lot about like the songs and Michael Caine. And actually, there's one last moment of comedy that I did want to point out because it also cracks me up. Whenever Michael Caine or Scrooge shows up at the end, and he's playing like the kind of humbug Scrooge. He's like, he's at the door because he's like tricking them and whatnot. Whenever he's like, did I not say that, or where were you? And he's like, oh, you gave the day off. And he's like, does that sound like something that I would do? And then he's like, I am therefore going to give you a raise. And Miss Piggy is like, and I'm going to raise you right off this pavement. And then she like pauses and realizes, but the way she says, I'm going to raise you right off this pavement after he says he's going to give her a raise or him a raise kills me.
So good.
It's hilarious. But we talked about part of the reason why Michael Caine's performance works so well is because he treats the Muppets like they're people. What do you think of the Muppets as characters themselves? Like, are you able to buy their parts in the story, like scenes where Michael Caine isn't there, we have no actual human on stage? Is the drama still kind of able to work for you in those scenes? And do you feel like you're watching actual characters and performances?
Yeah, I think Kermit is pretty fantastic in this. And I think it like really lends itself to like the type of character that Kermit the Frog already is. But I really like how like timid he is throughout the film. And I mean, like even when he like finally like stands up to Scrooge and is like, hey, can we get the day off tomorrow? Like he's still like super nervous and anxious, and I think that is played like really well. I also love like the drama like just between his whole family and like Tiny Tim. I mean, like this movie is straight up like makes me cry. Like,
same.
Like, and it's not just because of Michael Caine. It's also because like the Muppet characters I do think are really convincing. Like seeing what could happen to Tiny Tim is tragic. And again, I think they like kind of play into like, oh, well, he's a cute Muppet character. But also it's like, I think that if the Muppet characters didn't actually feel like characters, I don't think I would have had it wouldn't have had that same impact for me.
Yeah. Nobody's going, oh, am I supposed to cry for like the fake frog puppet? It's like, no, you better cry. It's Tiny Tim, man.
Yeah.
And like you said, like in just the scenes of the Cratchit family, there's real drama that's played out there. There's a lot of great comedy there, but there's the scene in the whole Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come sequence whenever they're waiting for Bob to come back. It's Christmas Eve. They're cooking the goose and they're waiting. And the eldest son is like, Dad's been walking a little slower ever since. I'm like, oh, don't you do this. And there's a line where I'm like, I was not expecting for this like level of nuance in either emotional nuance or just nuance in the performance from puppets. But like whenever he comes in and she's like, how was the funeral? And he's like, it was really nice. It would have done him proud to see everybody there. And then he says, I picked a spot where he can look at the ducks on the lake. And when he says like, this is the kind of writing I'm like, dude, you're writing a Muppet movie. You didn't have like, man, this is so good though.
Yeah.
When he's like, Tiny Tim and he stops and he's realizing he's still talking about his son in present tense and has to stop. And then she picks up for him because his voice is breaking, and she's like, "Tiny
Yeah.
Tim always loved watching the." I'm like, this is a frog puppet and a pig puppet. Like, what are we doing here? Why,
Yeah.
why am I feeling so much? But like that level of like nuance of just still speaking about his son in present tense, and his wife comforting him when he can't really speak, and the children gathering around, like, and his speech to them, like, this is our first Christmas after a loss and whatnot. I'm like, golly, dude, this is insane.
Yes, it really is. And I think, like, to kind of tie back to what we talked about before, um even the Muppet characters, obviously we've got some jokes like here and there, but like the main like family, they play those characters like the actual like characters from the Christmas Carol, like they're also paying respect to the story through the Muppet characters themselves. It's not just Michael Caine being Scrooge, it's also like Kermit, Tiny
Being
Tim, like
Bob.
all of
Yeah.
them, like they are still those characters. um and I think that's part of the reason why it works so well, because if, like, obviously you've got the nuances in the performances, which is just unreal, but like you have to pay respect to those characters. Like, I think that it would be a lot harder to take this seriously if they were, just there for comedic purposes only.
Right. Yeah, they're real characters because they need to be, and yet it still rides this fine line of still like incorporating the Muppet personalities into it at times, but like it's that perfect like razor thin line that it like is able to balance perfectly on. But like there's that line whenever Miss Piggy, she's like, all right, go help your sister Bettina, and she's like, I'm not Bettina, I'm Belinda. And she's like, oh, sorry, Belina. And she's like, no, Bettina. And she just looks at the camera and she's like, whatever. Like, there are these moments are having Animal the Muppet be the drummer at Fozziwig's Christmas party and stuff. Like, you've got those things where it's like they're incorporating, like, this Muppet already kind of has their personality that permeates every movie they're in.
Yeah.
Like you would never cast Kermit as a villain. Kermit is like the good guy, and so he's always going to play the good guy, and he's going to bring in aspects of him. Miss Piggy's going to be the same. Like you're always going to incorporate certain things that are just intrinsically linked to like the perception of that Muppet. And it's able to do that while also still being like, hey, this is both Miss Piggy and Mrs. Cratchit. Like at the same time, this is Bob and Kermit. Like the two are one and the same right now. And I can't tell you why or how it works, but it does.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, it's constantly walking this perfect line. One of the last things I want to talk about before we end it is I also just think, as far as being a movie, I think this is just, aside from being like well written, well acted, all that, I think it's a well made film.
Yes.
I think the direction is like super solid. Are there anything like moments or any pieces of it that like stand out to you where you're like, I'm also like, I'm watching a fun Muppet movie, but I'm watching a real movie too.
Yeah, honestly, I think one of the ways that it really makes it feel like a real movie to me is how incredible the sets and production design is. Like you had mentioned, like near the start of the stream, it actually feels like these characters are living in this world. Like it feels like a living and breathing world, but it looks great too. It's like you didn't have to go this hard with the sets either, because
Yeah.
they look incredible. But they did, and it's awesome. Like, so I think just how like real the world looks really lends itself into feeling and looking like a real movie.
Yeah.
But I also think it's just shot super well too.
Yeah.
The shot, the still that I have for the thumbnail of this stream, where Kermit is like looking up at the moon,
Yeah.
cinema.
It is.
It literally is cinema. Like, it, in every way, they're like, you know what, why not, we'll go hard with this.
Yeah. In every aspect. The production design is such a good call. Like, it is so, you feel like this is an expensive, in all the right kind of ways,
Yes.
movie.
Yeah.
Like, they're not putting up cardboard sets because they're like, well, we got Muppet cast, we can do that. It's like, no, dude, we're going all out. I think the actual production of the Marley and Marley song is incredible. Just having them rise up from that like bottomless pit with the chains, that scene also terrified me as a kid, seeing them like
Yeah.
choked by the chains, pulling them down back to their grave. I'm like, oh my gosh. But like, that looks amazing. The effect on the Ghost of Christmas Past is like amazing. Like, if you made that movie now, I would say don't do anything different. This is
Yeah.
like so iconic and kind of terrifying, but so like such a mesmerizing effect, and like the voice and everything. And then just like you were saying, like the cinematography, like you can take so many stills from this and be like, dude, that's a real movie. Like that,
Yes.
we're looking at a real thing. And like, they like, whenever things are getting like, they do Dutch angles when they're wanting to do Dutch angles, and they're like the image of like the doorknob becoming Marley, and like when you're doing that weird effect where everything else gets small and it pushes in on the handle, it's like it's doing the things that real movies do. It's not
Yeah.
just whatever, like the camera is moving and panning, and like it's
And
shot so
the
intentionally.
even like, to go as far as like the blocking is so intentional, like, because you have so many like Muppet characters on screen, with Michael Caine, like, just each of the characters are just like in the perfect like place at all times, like to just make these like really like gorgeous compositions. It's again, it's like this, I don't know why they were like, this is the one where we're just gonna go crazy with it.
That's a good point too, is trying to get like, all of these compositions have to take the puppets into mind, in that literally inches below frame there are actors like holding their hands up and stuff. So like, you can't ever shoot it without that in mind. So every cool shot, every good movement of the, like, everything also has to keep that in mind, which I hadn't even really thought about until you mentioned that. But yeah, like, there's like a whole world of artistry and puppetry happening like inches below every frame, which is cool to think. Brandon said, my 12-year-old daughter is listening. She thinks it's the perfect level of creepy and not creepy, just enough comedy to offset it. I love that she's listening. And I love that she thinks the same, because that's like, I think that's a good way to put it, of like, it's not, they don't lean so hard on the comedy at the expense of like the fact that like we are dealing with what is ultimately like, it's a ghost story. Like, this is a ghost story,
Yeah.
And so it doesn't diminish the creepiness, but it does allow the Muppets and the clever humor and the levity. Like, it does find that good balance. And I'm a big fan of kids movies that let themselves kind of like indulge a certain level of like scariness. Like, I love that line that I mentioned earlier, where Rizzo is like, oh, this is a bit creepy. Shouldn't we think of the kids in the audience? And Gonzo's like, it's all right. This is culture. Like, I love that line. But like, just the right amount. I think just the right amount of creepiness makes things memorable. I think things just stick in the mind of a child more if it has some creepiness to it. Like it's like whenever I was a kid watching The Dark Crystal or watching The Neverending Story, the wolf terrified me, and The Neverending Story.
Mm.
And I think that kind of made it stand out more to me because I knew whenever I was rewatching, I'm like, if I'm hitting play on this, that means I got to sit through the wolf. So here we go. Like, but it kind of it just the memory lasts longer because it's coming with all of this kind of imagery that really sticks out.
Yeah, and I think honestly that's something that's like kind of a lost art in a lot of like modern like family films. They kind of like shied away from that. I feel like, you know, Spielberg was honestly like a huge like driving force for like adding that like little bit of creepy factor to like a lot of his like more family oriented films.
Yeah.
I mean, like I know Indiana Jones, like it is a PG rated movie. So like, and back then it really did push boundaries. But like when I was a kid watching Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time, like, and then like seeing the dude's face melt, and
Yeah.
then
I mean,
like
it
every single
traumatized me.
time I'm like, oh, I really want to rewatch this because I love this movie, but like also, man, I'm about to like poop my pants because this is
Yeah.
terrifying. And like I can name so many films that I watched as a kid. Heck, even Snow White, The Witch and the Snow White,
Yeah.
the original Snow White movie. That movie scared me for the longest time. Like I could not rewatch it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like when like these like family oriented movies have like a little bit of creepiness to it or a little bit of
Some kind of edge or darkness to them.
yes, or something that you know, it kind of just it doesn't necessarily have to have edge to it, but like something that an adult watching it takes something away from it too.
Yeah. That and like I think balancing if we're still sticking to just the idea of like something being creepy within a kids movie, I think finding that balance of like you're not going to scare an adult with this, but they're going to be able to appreciate it, and it's like the horror is scaled for the age where
Yeah.
like watching the Muppet Christmas Carol as a kid might be more akin to watching like not a full-on horror movie because the Muppet Christmas Carol is not like a horror movie for kids or adults, but it has those creepy elements. So it might be watching, or it might be like as an adult watching something that does the same for you now, where you're like, this isn't a horror movie, but this part really got me. It's the same for a kid where like an adult may not jump at like the handle turning into the doorknob turning into the face, or like the guys getting dragged down with chains, or the Black Rider looking ghost of Christmas Future. Like, but as a kid, that is like just the perfectly appropriate amount of like tailor-made spooks for a child. And not the kind of like, I don't know, so many like horror themed creepy, like, Halloween themed content for kids is like it's basically what they're always watching, but the main character is wearing a witch hat, so it's Halloween themed. It's like, no, there's no added level of like, well, because this is a quote unquote scary, thing for
Yeah.
kids. The movies actually let an appropriate amount of creepiness in.
Looking back at the comments real quick, Michael just hopped in, and he said he's been asleep for a few hours. He misses us. Dude, we miss Michael too.
Feel better.
Yes, please feel better soon. Michael couldn't join us sadly because he is suffering from sickness. So keep him in your thoughts and prayers because he's fighting wars right now. And then Brandon said he believes Temple of Doom was responsible for the PG-13 rating. And yeah, you are right on that. I think Temple of Doom, there was one other film around the same time, and they were like, all right, we got to make a PG-13 rating. Yeah. And then this one's going back a little bit, but Stone said he often forgets that they're Muppets because of how well it's blocked and directed.
Yeah, it's like it in a weird way. It's like watching a character like Gollum, where initially you're like your brain is not telling you that that is every bit as real and normal as the human actors around him. You're aware that there's like an effect in front of you, but minutes in, and that awareness fades, and it's no, that's Gollum. And I think the same thing is applicable here, where like I'm never like I'm not gonna lie and say I'm not aware that like whenever I put this on, I'm like, oh, there's these are puppets, blah blah blah. But as it moves on, it's like, no, that's Bob Cratchit. What are you talking about? Like it's just you buy into what this movie is saying is its own reality, and it does so in really cool. I guess to go back to some of the technical side of it, it does so in really cool ways. Like you had mentioned that, like, um, Kermit's performance is kind of like he's got this like kind of tepid um, shyness to him. The things they do to like portray that, like whenever he's on, like gulping and he's having to like get himself to say something, like they suction in on his mouth, like he's like
yeah,
there's not just like a physical performance in that he's on screen, but there's like a freaking facial performance happening too. Um, they do that, like a lot of characters kind of get that, where just the puppetry, they're able to like manipulate the face and contort faces to be incorporated into the performance. And the scene whenever he's walking home singing One More Sleep Till Christmas with Tiny Tim on his shoulders, the way they do that effect of like they've got just a big like basically a giant ball, and he is stationary, they're lifting his legs, and that's what's cool too, is in this you see his whole body. So like this is a full puppet, they are like a it's puppetry without like the actual hand in the puppet kind of thing. Like it's everything is like it's being manipulated outside of the frame. But you see him walking, and they've got this ball rotating. So he's walking on this rotating ball, but the back, like they've got this not a projection background, but they've got like just this either, I can't remember if it's like a set or it's like the kind of wallpaper thing, but they've got a background getting further and further, like he's like walking past something. So just with the effect of like having something pass him by and a circular ball that he's stepping on, it like mimics that look of like walking down a street. It's so cool. Like there are just so many little like cool bits of like, that's, people were being creative. Like there is so much incredible artistry and creativity in scenes like that. There's a lot of really cool model work and miniature work, and like the way they get around the puppets. It's just, man, it's so cool.
Yeah, and like I'm not someone who's like anti CGI, because there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with CGI.
Gollum.
Yeah, Gollum. Yeah, but like there's something about like just how creators have to like really get creative and think outside of the box when they're forced to use practical effects only. And I know like obviously like this is different because like this is specifically like puppetry, which is like an art form of its own. But like, I mean, like who would have thought of using like a rolling ball to like mimic the walking and then like have the back, like it's like you can't do stuff like that with CGI. Like when you're confined by like limitations, I think that's where like creators can really shine creatively because they're forced to be creative.
Yeah, and there's just that. There's something cool about being like I know that everything I'm looking at within this frame is there. You know, like whatever effect there is, whatever like whatever they're doing to convince me of what I'm seeing, it's in frame. There's no, it wasn't shot and then they said, all right, now we'll add this, blah blah blah. Which is why, like, there is one change Disney made, and I wish they didn't, which is, so for the puppets, they, you know, for them to move their arms, they have to have wires, you know, and the sticks. And so typically it's like if their hand is out here, they've got a wire right here or a stick right here, and it's going straight to the ground that the person's moving and manipulating. And that, those are always in frame. You always see the little stick moving their arms and stuff. So in a way, like you're always seeing the illusion. You're that's always there. But I think what's a testament to just the commitment the movie makes to the characters and the tone is that we can see all that string and wires and everything and still say, no, that's Bob Cratchit. And Disney, in uploading it, Disney has digitally erased all of like the wires and sticks that manipulate the arms and everything. And I don't like that. One, just on the most basic principle of I almost never like any kind of going back like that. Especially like, we can make exceptions for like it's the director himself who's revisiting his own work, you know, that miles may vary on something like that. But when it's like we have the streaming rights to this now and we're going back and touching art we didn't have a hand in, that bothers me, even as like it's just on the most fundamental, regardless of what the change is. I just don't like the idea of somebody saying, hey, we're going to take this out. But on top of that, it also speaks to a lack of it, like intentionally or no, it just speaks to a lack of confidence in the movie's ability to sell its own reality. They're like, well, this will be just that much better if we can pull out the wires. It's like, no, like the wires have been there since 1991 or whenever this came out. They've always been there and we've always loved it and we've always accepted them as characters. That's Bob Cratchit, you know, that's Charles Dickens. That's, you know, that's who they are. I don't need you or want you to come in and erase these wires because they don't need that. These performances are so great that I don't want it. It never needed, like, it never needed any extra help, you know? And so I don't like that kind of editing at all.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. Also, Han shot first.
Yeah, exactly. We allow McClunky though.
Yeah, I was gonna say McClunky is great. Oh man.
I want every future edit to just layer on like something new to the McClunky. I feel like that's just a new tradition now. Is like we've got to like do something to that scene. Brandon said it's like something I'm familiar with. Good community theater. Often you know those actors if the community is small enough. But if the right level of commitment is there, we forget. And yeah, like that's the thing is the more like once a thing is done and it's out there and it turns out it works, it's proven itself and it doesn't need anybody's help anymore. And so, like I said, I don't know that Disney is thinking like, well, the puppets just weren't quite good enough, so we're going to do that. But to me, that's what it's accidentally saying. It's like, it could just be that much better if we didn't have to try to like, you know, hide the fact that they're like, let's just hide that so that people aren't distracted. And it's like, I was never distracted. I'm more distracted now actually because I'm thinking like, wait, wasn't there a wire there before? I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my thoughts there on the Disney edit. I don't like it. I've
release the director's cut.
Exactly. They're for however I don't know how many changes they've made, but anytime something has gone back on Disney Plus, and it's like this is what it was like originally. Even silly little things like the Lilo, like there's a bunch of weird little background stuff in Lilo and Stitch that they've changed, and I'm like, it's almost worse when it's small things because nobody notices it, which means they get away with it.
Yeah.
And those are the insidious changes that bother me more than anything because I hate the precedent it sets. Anyways, those rants aside, Drew, you have any final thoughts on this film?
I think my only final thought is that I kind of want to watch some Muppets now.
I do too. I haven't watched this one yet this year, so the rewatch is likely just around the corner for me. But
yeah, same here.
I'm so ready for it.
But I also really want to rewatch the Treasure Island one now.
It's so good. It's so funny. I wish that they would bring that back. As far as I know it, those are the only two literary adaptations they've done. But I would love for them to like continue that that idea of taking like classic pieces of literature and doing the Muppet adaptation, because they've now shown that they can do so in a way that's both like really fun and Muppety while also being totally like reverential of the source material. Somebody pointed out, they're like, can we please get Pride and Prejudice with starring Miss Piggy? Like
that would be great.
But get like, make Darcy is a dude, like, or I guess Darcy would be Kermit, but like get some like just have fun doing like Pride and Prejudice or like or some Jane Austen book, and like have a lot of fun in deciding who's human and who's a Muppet. I would love that. Bring it back. Do Moby Dick. Do like just
do Dostoevsky.
Oh my God. Do Crime and Punishment.
Yeah. Oh man. No, that would that would be fantastic. I would watch that in a heartbeat.
Stone said, grew up on Muppet Treasure Island, had it on VHS, and I've probably seen it 300 times. Yeah, Muppet Treasure Island. I do not remember this because I was so young, but we had a VHS and TV in our old school like 90s van, and apparently as like a 4-year-old, I forced the entire car to rewatch Muppet Treasure Island like again and again on an 8-hour car ride. An infamous story for me now, but I still love that movie. Brandon said Kermit as Rodion, Raskolnikov, Crime and Punishment. I don't want to see Kermit do some of the things Raskolnikov does, but I also kind of do. But anyways, yeah, they should bring that back.
Michael said Muppets High School Musical.
Oh my gosh.
What time is it? It's summertime.
Cinema. But all right. Well, I think we've talked probably not exhausted everything for this film, because there's no like, I don't think this is a movie that kind of needs a handicap to be given a great score. Like, it's not like, well, on its own, it's pretty good, but what makes it really even better is just when you factor in, the Muppets. And I'm like, on one hand, true, but on the other hand, like,
it's just really well crafted.
Yeah, it's just a great movie that doesn't need any like, and now let's adjust the score because it's a kids Muppet movie. It's like, no adjusting. I love it. And that's just it's my personal favorite Christmas movie because it does, like, Christmas and musicals just are a thing that really work for me. I love musicals. I love really good musical numbers, and I love all of these songs so much. I think it's hilarious. And then, like you had brought up earlier, the Christmas movies that are able to mix some really like some heaviness to it, but still find that really deep joy that a Christmas movie can find. Like, I'm all about that as well. And so this movie checks every box for me. It's funny, it's dramatic, the music is great. It brings me, these freaking puppets are making me cry. I love this movie so much, and it's truly one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, and it's become one of my favorites too. Which it's a more recent watch for me because I only watched it for the first time 2 years ago. But the fact that it's made that much of an impression on me since then, I think speaks volumes to like just how great it actually is. Because I love a lot of great Christmas movies, but this one like really stands out as like an all-timer.
You need to show it to your girlfriend, see what she thinks. This is a good movie.
I've already told her because she hasn't seen it before, and I'm like, we have to watch it this year.
Yeah, it's too. You're not gonna believe the performances and just like the drama and emotion that you're gonna go through in this Muppet movie. All right, well, that was super fun. I'm really glad that we got to talk about Muppet Christmas Carol on the podcast.
Yes.
Only
if Michael could have been here with us.
Yeah, we miss you, Michael, but hope you feel better and ready to join us next time. I think, I'm pretty sure, at the very least, I think it's safe to say that we will be covering a movie that was in the poll but was not voted for. I don't know if we've decided exactly which one it is, but whatever we're doing next is going to be one of the movies on that poll. So
I don't think we've like set it in stone, but I definitely think it's probably going to be It's a Wonderful Life.
Gosh, I'm so ready. That's another movie that just makes me cry.
Yes.
So good. I love me good Christmas movies.
I do too. Thank you, Brandon, for joining us. Brandon said, lovely chat, gentlemen. Thanks. Looking forward to seeing this one this year.
Same. I'm ready. I'm really ready for the rewatch. I think it may have to happen this weekend. So
yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Michael, Andrew, Stone, Brandon. We enjoyed the chat. We enjoyed being able to get some back and forth, as well as just talking about this movie. So until next week, we will see y'all later.